Her words, like a cloying, synthetic scent, killed my appetite. "You're just, embarrassing, Dad." Olivia delivered the verdict with breezy indifference, as though commenting on the humidity, yet the barb landed squarely. Embarrassing. The word felt like a brand, seared onto my skin. My fork scraped against the plate, the sound amplified in the charged silence. I risked a glance. She was toying with her salad, eyes downcast, seemingly unaffected by the small explosion she triggered in our peaceful dining room. Martha cleared her throat, a silent appeal for peace, but I couldn't let it slide. Not this time. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments section where you are listening from. My name is George Bennett. I'm 57 years old. I managed, striving for composure. A futile effort. Embarrassing in what way, Liv? My face flushed. She sighed, the dramatic sigh of a teen burdened by parental existence. Just, everything. Your clothes, your pronouncements, your complete inability to grasp anything current. Grasp what, specifically? I challenged, the word sharper than intended. Olivia's eye roll ignited a slow simmer of irritation within me. Social media, Dad. Influencers, what's trending, life itself. You're positively prehistoric. Martha laid a calming hand on my arm. George, perhaps we table this for later. But I couldn't back down. Not when she was attacking my very essence. So, because I don't dedicate my days to a screen, faking perfection for internet strangers, I'm embarrassing? It's not faking, Dad. It's curating. Brand building. A brand? I scoffed. When did life become a marketing campaign? Olivia's fork clattered against the table as she finally met my gaze, her usually bright eyes now flinty. Since you decided to cocoon me in this time warp. Everyone else is evolving, and you're stuck in amber. I pushed my plate away, the chicken suddenly tasting like cardboard. The past. Ironically, my mind was already there, drifting back to a time before brands and followers consumed Olivia. Back to scraped knees and fantastical stories spun with dolls in the backyard. I recalled building her treehouse, meticulously hammering each nail, her small hand nestled in mine, laughter ringing through the branches. Where had that innocent spirit vanished? The silence deepened, thick with unspoken tension. Martha excused herself, her face etched with worry. I'll tackle the dishes, she murmured, almost inaudibly. I watched Olivia retreat, the click of her bedroom door a definitive period at the end of our fractured conversation. Later, I stood outside her door, hesitant to intrude. The faint glow of her phone bled from beneath the frame. Taking a breath, I tapped lightly. Go away, she mumbled. I opened the door regardless. She sat cross-legged, phone in hand, meticulously tweaking the filter on a photo. A picture from her soup kitchen volunteering, an event she bitterly protested just hours prior. I watched, a silent witness, as she angled her head, pursed her lips, and tapped the screen, adding a caption brimming with hollow platitudes about giving back and making an impact. The irony nearly choked me. The soup kitchen director had called me last week to ask if Olivia could be excused from her duties due to chronic absences. She hadn't even bothered showing up to clean. What are you doing? I asked softly. Startled, she quickly locked her phone. Nothing. Just, posting. I saw the picture, Olivia. From the soup kitchen. You looked so virtuous. The sarcasm slipped out, unbidden. She glared. What's your problem, Dad? I'm trying to make a difference. Are you? Or just creating the illusion of making a difference? She offered no reply, her silence a tacit admission. I sat on the bed's edge, the springs groaning a weary protest. The room was a jarring mix of teenage disarray and calculated aesthetics. Designer clothes lay scattered amongst empty makeup palettes and abandoned art projects. A tableau of a life desperately striving for a veneer of perfection, while the reality was far more complex. "Olivia," I said gently. "I don't give a damn about your brand. I care about you. I want you to be genuinely happy, not just appear that way." She avoided my eyes, her fingers twisting the edge of the duvet. "I am happy," she mumbled. But I saw the emptiness lurking beneath the carefully constructed facade, the longing for something authentic, something true. And I knew, with a disheartening certainty, that I bore some responsibility. Had I failed her somehow? Had I been so focused on providing material comforts that I'd neglected to nurture genuine contentment? I rose, my joints clicking in protest. "Just, think about it, okay?" I exited her room, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Embarrassing. The label still stung, but now tinged with a chilling new emotion, fear. Fear of losing my daughter, not to the allure of the modern world, but to a distorted reflection of herself. A prospect I found unbearable. Cracks in the facade. Widowerhood reshaped me. Honed the edges sharp, perhaps. Before Mary's passing, I was simply George, the history teacher with the booming laugh and a fondness for Harris Tweed. We were a matched set, a partnership. Together, we navigated the straits of parent-teacher nights and Olivia's adolescent storms. Afterward, survival was the only ambition, keeping the electricity flowing and food on Olivia's plate. I'd always taken pride in fatherhood, even if my approach was a tad old-fashioned. Raised on the land, I prized diligence, integrity, and a binding handshake, values I endeavored to pass to Olivia. I fostered her artistic spirit, her fervent passion, even when it manifested in questionable dye jobs and attire that appeared salvaged from a refuse bin. Mary would have chuckled, I just sighed and reached for my wallet. But a fault line opened when Olivia discovered the allure of social media. It was as if she'd stumbled upon a gateway to an alternate reality, where existence was perpetually glossed, curated, and, to be frank, falsified. It began subtly enough. A flawlessly angled selfie before the Eiffel Tower during our European holiday, accompanied by a rapturous declaration of her love affair with Parisian culture. Never mind that she'd spent most of the trip complaining about the throngs and hankering for American fast food. Then followed the plant-based recipes, the saccharine affirmations plastered over stock images of sunsets, a relentless cascade of expertly illuminated, meticulously arranged tableaus. I attempted to dismiss it, attributing it to adolescent experimentation. But the fissures in the veneer grew too profound to ignore. One Saturday, Olivia announced her involvement at the local soup kitchen. I was genuinely warmed. I offered to drive, envisioning us side by side, serving nourishment and offering comfort. She politely demurred, citing plans to go with friends. Later that afternoon, her Instagram account erupted with a flurry of images. Olivia, glowing and beatific, dispensing bowls of stew. Olivia, crouched to converse with a man experiencing homelessness, her features radiating empathy. Olivia, encircled by appreciative recipients, bathed in an ethereal glow. Something felt discordant. The lighting was too calculated. The perspectives too studied. And where, exactly, were these friends? Propelled by a prickling unease, I decided to drop by the soup kitchen unannounced. It was nearing closing. The space was mostly vacant. I inquired of the volunteer supervisor if Olivia had been present. "Oh, you must be Olivia's father," she remarked with a weary smile. "She was here for about an hour. Snapped some stunning photographs. Mentioned something about a school assignment." An hour? Photographs? A school assignment? Her words carried the sting of accusation. She hadn't served meals, she'd posed. She hadn't connected with individuals, she'd utilized them as props. The compassion conveyed in her images felt as substantial as stagecraft. That school project alibi became a recurring refrain. She'd abandoned her university studies, claiming the rigid curriculum stifled her imaginative impulse. Instead, she was ostensibly pursuing a series of passion projects, a film exploring urban cultivation, a poetry compilation inspired by the natural world, a collection of sustainably manufactured clothing. Each venture was heralded with fanfare on social media, accompanied by painstakingly composed visuals and trending hashtags. Each one dissipated after a fleeting week or two, supplanted by yet another transient fascination. One night, I discovered her hunched over her laptop, surrounded by fabric samples and sketches. "So, how progresses the eco-friendly fashion line?" I inquired, striving to maintain equilibrium in my tone. She exhaled theatrically. "It's complicated, Dad. I'm encountering difficulties procuring sustainable materials. And locating a manufacturer whose principles align with my own is proving to be an ordeal." I arched a brow. "Principles? The same principles that motivated you to stage photos at a soup kitchen?" Fury ignited in her gaze. "That was different. It was for a class assignment." "A project you misrepresented," I retorted, my voice gaining volume. "Olivia, you're living a pretense. This entire online self is fiction. It's not you. You don't understand," she shouted, snapping her laptop closed. "Everyone does it, Dad. It's called branding. It's called building a platform. Constructing a platform on a quicksand of falsities." I responded, shaking my head. "What transpires when people unearth the truth?" "They won't," she countered, her voice ringing with defiance. "Because I'm skillful at this. I'm remarkably, exceptionally skillful at this." And that was the moment genuine fear took root. Not simply the dread of her potential humiliation or mockery, but the profound fear that she was systematically dismantling herself, one facade at a time, behind this meticulously crafted image. That she was morphing into the very thing I had always cautioned her against, someone who prioritized appearances over authenticity, likes over genuine human connection. The daughter I cherished, the compassionate, imaginative, and occasionally exasperatingly headstrong Olivia, was dimming, supplanted by a refined, flawless, and utterly vacant simulacrum. The truth unveiled. The laptop's quiet were filled the cavernous silence of the house. It glowed on the counter, an innocuous rectangle holding the key to everything. I hadn't dared touch it since Mary. Now, it loomed, a digital Pandora's box promising truths about the stranger my daughter had become. My fingers, clumsy with dread, fumbled as I raised the lid. The screen bloomed with light, revealing Olivia's meticulously arranged desktop. Even her shortcuts radiated a crafted perfection. I clicked through to her browsing history, a cold stone settling in my stomach with each entry: Instagram, Facebook, that insatiable vortex of TikTok, a relentless stream of platforms showcasing a world I couldn't penetrate, a world where Olivia apparently flourished. The sheer volume overwhelmed me. Image after image of her volunteering at soup kitchens, radiant alongside the supposed beneficiaries of her largesse. Photographs of her buried behind stacks of textbooks, ostensibly preparing for exams. Videos of impassioned pleas for environmental protection, her voice ringing with earnest conviction. It all felt so curated, so impossibly flawless. A tendril of doubt, planted during our last argument, unfurled in my mind. A click led me to a local news item about a food drive. There she was, Olivia, distributing grocery bags. But something was amiss. The backdrop felt too sterile, the lighting too artful. And the recipients possessed a distinctly posed quality. Prompted by gnawing suspicion, I sought out the charity organization cited in the article. Their website was surprisingly rudimentary, lacking the polished veneer of Olivia's online presence. I sifted through their meager gallery. No Olivia. Not a single trace of her involvement. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat of dread. I felt a rising nausea. Then, the college transcripts surfaced in my memory. Olivia had flashed them at me months ago, preening over her stellar marks. She kept a digital copy, of course. A rushed search unearthed a folder labeled Important Documents. Nestled among the mundane realities of tax documents and insurance policies, the transcript awaited. I opened the file, my hands trembling so violently I nearly lost my grip. The document appeared authentic, complete with the official university seal and a list of impressive grades. Yet, something about the typeface felt off-key. I zoomed in, scrutinizing each letter. A subtle pixelation fringed the edges, an almost imperceptible inconsistency in the spacing. It was a fake. An expertly crafted one, but undeniably a forgery. The kitchen air seemed to constrict, stealing my breath. My daughter, my Olivia, had constructed a facade of lies. Not a harmless fib, but a calculated, elaborate deceit. She hadn't been attending classes, hadn't earned those stellar grades. What abyss had she been lost in instead? I needed irrefutable confirmation. Returning to her social media accounts, I now dissected every detail with a newfound intensity. Blowing up the soup kitchen photos, I spotted it, a catering van lurking in the background. Not a soup kitchen, but a carefully staged scene. The grateful recipients were paid extras. The environmental advocacy videos. A reverse image search revealed the locations were stock photos. The impassioned speeches. Lifted verbatim from obscure environmental blogs. It was all manufactured. Every perfect post, every painstakingly crafted image, every heartfelt appeal, a total fabrication. Olivia had constructed an entire digital identity on a foundation of falsehoods. A hollow shell concealing, what? As the full weight of the revelation crushed me, a wave of bilious nausea threatened to spill over. I staggered to the sink, clinging to the cold porcelain for support. This wasn't mere teenage rebellion. This was a symptom of something far more profound, something terrifying. I was consumed by a profound sense of bereavement. The daughter I believed I knew, the intelligent, compassionate girl who found solace in art, literature, and debate, had vanished. Replaced by a specter, a digital echo consumed by likes and followers. How could I have been so naive? How had I missed the warning signs? The laptop continued its quiet thrum, a constant, maddening reminder of the chasm that yawned between us. I slammed the lid with a guttural sound that split the silence. I couldn't breathe, felt a crushing weight against my chest. I had to confront her. I had to understand the why that fueled this elaborate charade. But a terrified corner of my mind whispered that I already knew the answer. Olivia wasn't just trying to fool the world. She was desperately trying to fool herself. A father's dilemma. The glow of the laptop screen burned into my retinas, each pixel a tiny accusation. Expose her. The thought churned in my gut like spoiled milk. It wasn't just about the online lies, the fabricated accolades and the carefully curated image of a do-gooder. It was about Mary. My Mary, gone too soon, and the gnawing suspicion that Olivia's facade somehow contributed to her despair. But what right did I have? Olivia was grieving, lost, perhaps even more broken than I was. To tear down her carefully constructed world, even if it was built on falsehoods, felt like kicking a wounded animal. Was I acting out of love, or out of some twisted sense of revenge? I pushed back from the desk, the leather of the chair squeaking in protest. The house was silent, heavy with the absence of laughter, of life. I wandered into the kitchen, the cold granite countertop a stark contrast to the heat rising in my chest. I needed facts, not feelings. Sipping lukewarm coffee, I pulled out my phone, its screen suddenly feeling alien and complex. I Googled consequences of online deception, my thumbs clumsy on the glass. Articles popped up, a dizzying array of legal jargon and moral pronouncements. Defamation lawsuits, reputational damage, social ostracization. Each click felt like another step closer to a precipice. One article, about a young influencer exposed for faking a terminal illness, chilled me to the bone. The online backlash had been brutal, relentless. The influencer had vanished, scrubbing her presence from the internet, presumably to start over, to disappear. Was that what I wanted for Olivia? To force her into hiding, to erase her existence. That night, sleep offered no escape. I tossed and turned, haunted by a recurring dream. I saw Olivia, but not the Olivia I knew, or thought I knew. This Olivia was spinning, caught in a vortex of likes and comments, her eyes wide with a desperate hunger. Each click of a mouse, each tap on a screen, pulled her further down, away from me, away from reality. Her voice, distorted and echoing, cried out for help, but the words were lost in the digital din. I reached for her, but my hands grasped only air. The dream ended with her face dissolving into a stream of binary code, leaving me gasping in the darkness. The next morning, the dream lingered, a sticky residue of fear and uncertainty. I couldn't ignore it. I had to do something. But what? I decided to call Sarah, Olivia's therapist. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. The thought of facing her, of admitting my own failings as a father, made my stomach clench. But I needed an outside perspective, someone who understood Olivia's fragile state of mind. George, Sarah's voice was warm, laced with a quiet understanding. How are you holding up? As well as can be expected, I mumbled, the platitude tasting like ash in my mouth. I need your advice. It's about Olivia. I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I've discovered some things about her online life. It's not entirely truthful. There was a pause on the other end of the line. George, I can't discuss Olivia's therapy sessions with you. That would be a breach of confidentiality. I understand, I said quickly. I'm not asking you to tell me anything she's told you. I just need to know, what would be the impact of exposing this? What would it do to her? Sarah sighed. That's a complex question, George. It depends on so many factors. But in her current state, any significant trauma, any public shaming, it could be devastating. She's already incredibly vulnerable. Her words confirmed my worst fears. I was trapped. I couldn't stand by and watch her continue to live a lie, but I couldn't risk shattering her completely. I was caught in a father's dilemma, torn between truth and protection, between justice and mercy. The weight of it threatened to crush me. What kind of a father was I, to be so lost, so utterly powerless to help my own daughter? My hands trembled as I typed the final character of the disposable email address, truthseeker74@protonmail.com, ProtonMail. Encrypted. Anonymous. Olivia would scoff at my ineptitude, but Mrs. Davison at the library had assured me it was untraceable. Mrs. Davison, bless her heart, still used dial-up. But she meant well. The cursor blinked mockingly in the subject line, a wolf in sheep's clothing. It felt melodramatic, even to me. But the rage, the simmering anger that had been building since I'd discovered Olivia's deception, demanded an outlet. It wasn't just the lies, the carefully curated image of philanthropy, the fake friendships. It was the feeling that Mary, my sweet, trusting Mary, had somehow been a victim of this charade. Taking a deep breath, I began to type. The words flowed, fueled by weeks of suppressed grief and righteous indignation. I laid it all out, the photoshopped images, the borrowed designer clothes, the fabricated volunteer work at the animal shelter. I even included the real reason she'd left college, not a gap year of self-discovery, as she told everyone, but a string of failed exams and a near expulsion for plagiarism. Each sentence felt like a betrayal, a violation of the bond between father and daughter. But I justified it with the memory of Mary's tear-stained face, her quiet despair as she scrolled through Olivia's seemingly perfect life online. This influencer, Olivia Bennett, is not who she appears to be, I wrote. Behind the filtered selfies and the carefully crafted captions lies a web of lies and deceit. I attached a selection of photos, Olivia in a borrowed gown at a charity gala, smiling radiantly, next to a screen grab of the same dress available for rent online. Olivia holding a rescued puppy, juxtaposed with a comment from a shelter worker stating she'd only stayed for 15 minutes and hadn't interacted with the animals. The evidence was damning. The hardest part was revealing her academic failures. It felt like airing dirty laundry, exposing her vulnerabilities. But it was necessary, I told myself. People needed to see the real Olivia, not the manufactured persona she presented to the world. I addressed the email to Gossip Girl Gazette, a blog known for its ruthless exposés and rabid following. They wouldn't hesitate to tear her down. And that, I realized with a sickening lurch, was exactly what I wanted. With trembling fingers, I clicked send. The world didn't immediately change. The sun still shone through the gaps in the blinds. The kettle whistled in the kitchen. But a silent, invisible message was hurtling through the internet, carrying the secrets I had guarded for so long. I spent the next few hours glued to my laptop, refreshing the Gossip Girl Gazette website every few minutes. Nothing. The anxiety gnawed at me, a relentless beast clawing at my insides. Was I wrong? Had I overestimated the impact of my actions? Or worse, would they trace the email back to me? I pictured Olivia, oblivious, posting another carefully curated photo, basking in the adoration of her followers. The thought fueled my impatience, my desperate need for justice. Finally, around 10 p.m., it appeared. A headline screamed, "Influencer exposed." Is Olivia Bennet a fraud? My heart pounded in my chest. The article mirrored my email almost verbatim, complete with the damning photos. The comments section exploded with outrage, disbelief, and accusations. I knew it. Something always seemed off about her, one comment read. Fake charity work. How low can you go, another declared. The tide had turned. Olivia's carefully constructed world was crumbling before my eyes. A wave of nausea washed over me. I had wanted this, hadn't I? To expose her lies, to reveal the truth. But as I watched her online empire implode, a chilling realization dawned, I had unleashed a monster. And I had no idea how to control it. The internet was a cruel place. And Olivia, my Olivia, was now squarely in its crosshairs. The internet erupts. The fuse was lit in the gossip buzz comments, initially a mere spark. Then, an inferno raged. I was a pale gargoyle hunched over my screen, the unfolding drama a series of hammer blows. Is this verified? At Olivia Bennet, any truth to this? Borrowed couture. Seriously? I bought that frock because of you. Failing grades. What a sham. My gut twisted. A ripple, I'd envisioned. Not this cataclysm. The empire Olivia constructed, the one I bankrolled, was crumbling before my eyes. Each scroll unveiled a fresh wave of vitriol, 1,000 tiny darts aimed at her carefully fabricated persona. The follower count beside her name bled numbers, a rapidly diminishing tally. The insistent ringing of the phone was a persistent torment. I muted it, hand trembling. Mary, no doubt, wanting a post-mortem on my handiwork. Or worse, Olivia. I navigated to her Instagram. The transition was grotesque. The former tide of adoration, the heart emojis and gushing praise, had transformed into a sea of invective. Her latest post, a staged charity appearance at a soup kitchen, the canned goods artfully arranged, was ground zero for the attack. At Olivia Bennet, you're a fraud. 5 minutes for pictures, then you bolted. I witnessed it. At Olivia Bennet, I donated to your foundation last month. Where did those funds truly go? A fresh accusation materialized, she flunked out. A link to Gossip Buzz followed. My breath caught. It was all exposed. Then, a lone voice pierced the clamor. At Olivia Bennet, I still have faith in you. Everyone falters. Don't let it crush you. Marcus. I clicked his profile. His feed was now a digital war zone, his attempts at defending Olivia met with blistering scorn. "She's inherently good," he'd posted. "You don't understand everything." The reply, "We understand enough, Marcus. She's a fabrication." Guilt stabbed me, a sudden, unwelcome visitor. Marcus was a decent kid, steadfastly loyal, even complicit in her charade. Now he was taking the hits for her. Abruptly, Olivia's account went private. The torrent of abuse ceased. The follower count stalled. She'd withdrawn, fortified behind a virtual wall. Snapping shut the laptop, the room's quiet amplified the drone in my ears. Justice, I'd craved. The truth, I'd sought to reveal. But what had I truly accomplished? I'd wounded my daughter, perhaps beyond repair. I'd embroiled Marcus in this mire. And I'd unleashed a frenzy, a digital posse, intent on her destruction. The phones clamor again. This time, I relented. "Dad?" Olivia's voice, a breath of sound, barely audible. "What have you done?" The question hung, leaden with accusation and despair. I was mute, the weight of my actions crushing. "Dad, please," she pleaded, her voice fracturing. "Tell me you weren't behind this." I longed to fabricate, to claim error, misunderstanding, anything to alleviate her suffering. But the words choked me. "Olivia," I managed, my voice a rasp. "Just, please, leave me be," she choked out, severing the connection. The phone remained in my grasp, the ensuing silence deafening. The internet might have exploded, but in my world, a deep freeze had set in. Confrontation. The silence clung to the house, a heavy shroud. I remained in my armchair, the aged leather a cool haven beneath me, the newsprint untouched on my knees. Since Olivia's shriek had torn through the stillness, I hadn't stirred. It was a raw, untamed sound, pure agony given voice. Then, the sharp clicks of her heels against the floorboards heralded her arrival, each tap a hammer blow against my hope. She stood framed in the doorway, light spilling from the hall behind her, but her face was a mask of fury, an unfamiliar visage that stopped me. Her eyes, usually alight with mischief, were now shadowed depths, filled with unshed tears. "It was you," she stated, her voice a gravelly whisper, devoid of all inquiry. A stone formed in my throat, restricting my breath. "Olivia." She advanced, each step shrinking the space between us. "Don't," she cut me off, extending a trembling hand. "Don't utter my name. You orchestrated this. You demolished everything." My impulse was to embrace her, offer words of comfort, declare it all a ghastly mistake, born of a desire to shield her. But the intensity in her gaze deterred me. It was a frigid abhorrence that settled over me like winter. "I believed. I thought I was acting in your best interest," I stammered, the phrase sounding feeble even to me. Olivia delivered a short, cutting laugh, devoid of humor. "Best? You dare suggest this is best? You obliterated my world, my standing, all I've striven to achieve." "They were all falsehoods, Olivia," I pleaded, my voice rising in pitch. "The clothes, grades, charity, it was all an illusion." "So what if it was?" she cried, her voice cracking with anguish. "It was my illusion. It was my reality. And you ripped it away. You had no right." "I had every right," I retorted, finally letting go of my restraint. "You were living a fabrication, Olivia. A destructive one. Your mother would never have endorsed this path." The mention of her mother was a tactical error. Briefly, the pain flickered in her eyes, before being extinguished by a renewed surge of resentment. "Don't you dare involve her in this," she spat. "You killed her. You and your archaic values. She was stressed, worried because of me. And you simply sat in judgment." Her words struck with the force of a physical blow. I flinched, the accusation landing harder than any punch. "That's untrue," I murmured, the protest weak and unconvincing even to me. Isn't it? She challenged, closing the distance, her face inches from my own. You detested my life. My friends repulsed you. You hated everything about me. You couldn't bear my happiness, the fact that I was blazing my own trail. So, you obliterated it. I wanted your safety, I begged, the words thick with emotion. Those people online, they weren't true companions. They were unknown entities, judging you, exploiting you. And your superior, she countered, her voice laced with venom. You judged me, too, didn't you? You decided my life was misguided. You deemed I deserved punishment. I only sought to reveal the truth to you, I said, my voice barely audible. The truth, she mocked. Want to know the real truth? The truth is, I despise you. I despise you for what you did. I despise you for betraying my trust. And I despise you for making me feel this way. She whirled and strode away, her shoulders convulsing. At the threshold, she paused, not turning. I'm leaving, she announced, her voice toneless and devoid of life. I can't remain here. I can't bear to look at you. Olivia, please. I pleaded, but it was too late. She had vanished. The door slammed shut behind her, the sound reverberating through the hushed house like a funereal toll. I remained rooted in my armchair, the newspaper still resting idly on my lap, the weight of my actions pinning me down. I had sought to protect her, yet only succeeded in driving her further into the distance. I had yearned to rescue her, but only managed to dismantle both our lives. The house felt barren, colder than before. The manufactured scent of lavender suddenly turned acrid. I closed my eyes, the image of Olivia's face, contorted with animosity and anguish, seared into my memory. I had lost her. And I possessed no idea how to regain her. Explaining myself. The front door slammed, a gunshot in the sudden stillness of the house. I remained frozen, the cloying sweetness of her vanilla perfume clinging to the air, a ghostly reminder of her presence. A conversation was essential, understanding, paramount. Each step up the staircase felt like wading through thick mud. The door to her room stood slightly ajar, I nudged it open. Her space was a tableau of teenage rebellion, clothes in disarray, cosmetics scattered like jewels, a forgotten bowl of cereal hosting a swarm of unwelcome guests. It was chaos incarnate, mirroring, I feared, her inner turmoil. She sat on the edge of the bed, back towards me, her frame trembling. Suppressed sobs punctuated the silence, each one a tiny shard in my heart. This was a disastrous deviation from the expected. Olivia, I began, the word catching in my throat. No response. I edged closer. Liv, please. Let me try to explain. She finally pivoted, her face a roadmap of distress, eyes swollen and bloodshot. The earlier fury had dissolved, replaced by something far more unsettling, utter dejection. Explain what, Dad? How you detonated my existence. How you turned me into a public spectacle. That was never my intention, I countered, my voice thick. My only aim was protection. Protection? From experiencing life? She scrubbed at her tears with a balled fist. You didn't shield me, you mortified me. You stole everything that gave my life meaning. I perched on the bed's edge, careful to avoid contact. I was concerned, Olivia. I witnessed you transforming. Fixated on validation, projecting this, fabricated persona. It wasn't you. Not the Olivia I cherished. And who appointed you the arbiter of my identity? She shot back, her tone sharp. You haven't bothered to truly know me in years. You're trapped in the past, Dad. You're out of touch. This is how people connect now. This is how they build careers. This is how they discover themselves. The word stung. But it lacked authenticity, Liv. A mere charade. The charitable acts, the luxury goods, the extravagant trips, everything was borrowed, curated, or simply untrue. My hand hovered between us, a silent plea. I feared you were losing yourself in the process. Becoming a person I didn't recognize. She recoiled. So, you decided the solution was to expose me? To obliterate my reputation? To ensure my perpetual exile from public life? I reasoned. I believed exposing the truth would reveal it to you as well. That you'd recognize the precipice you were approaching. The explanation resonated weakly, even to myself. Precipice? You imagined I was in danger from Instagram? From the simple act of accumulating likes? A mirthless laugh escaped her. No, Dad. The only threat I faced was you. Your disapproval. Your inability to accept me as I am. I sighed, raking a hand through thinning hair. Your mother, she shared my concerns, Olivia. She sensed you slipping away. She noted the inordinate amount of time you dedicated online, the undue importance you placed on these ephemeral connections. She feared it was consuming you. Her eyes narrowed to slits. Leave Mom out of this, she warned, her voice laced with venom. Don't attempt to justify your actions by invoking her memory. She would never have stooped to this. My motivation stemmed from my love for her, and my love for you, I declared, my voice faltering. I dreaded losing you both. Too late, she murmured, barely audible. You already have. She turned towards the window, her back a rigid shield. The waning sunlight painted long shadows across the room, illuminating floating dust particles. I need space, Dad, she stated, her voice devoid of inflection. I need time to process everything. Where will you go? I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. I haven't decided, she responded, emotionless. Anywhere but here. Pivoting, she faced me, her gaze distant and cold. Just, please, leave me alone. I knew any further words would be futile. Rising, my limbs felt weighted. As I reached the doorway, I cast one last glance back. She remained at the window, a solitary silhouette against the dimming light. The house felt colder now, more desolate than ever. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the insistent drone of flies gorging on her discarded cereal. I had attempted to articulate my reasons, yet I knew, with a sinking feeling, she would never comprehend. And perhaps, I concluded with stark clarity, I didn't truly understand myself. Reaching out. The chipped ceramic of my coffee mug warmed my hands, but did little to thaw the chill that had settled deep in my bones. Olivia's words echoed, each syllable a hammer blow, you ruined me. I replayed the scene in my head, searching for a different outcome, a softer landing, anything to erase the raw devastation etched on her face. Finding nothing, I did the only thing I could think of, I reached out. Marcus answered on the third ring, his voice hesitant. Mr. Bennett? Is everything all right? Marcus, it's complicated. Could we meet? Coffee? My treat. He agreed, and an hour later, we were seated at a small table in the corner of the Daily Grind, the local coffee shop Olivia used to frequent. Marcus looked uncomfortable, his gaze darting around the room as if expecting Olivia to materialize and unleash her fury. So, he began, stirring his latte with unnecessary vigor, what's this about? I took a deep breath. It's about Olivia. About everything that's happened. I need your help, Marcus. You're one of the few people she trusts. He stopped stirring. Trusts? After what you did? I know. I messed up, badly. But I did what I thought was right. I believed, and still believe, that Olivia was losing herself in that fabricated world. I wanted to pull her back, to help her find her way again. By destroying her reputation. Marcus's voice was sharp. I didn't want to destroy anything. I wanted to redirect her. Show her that real life, real connections, are more valuable than likes and followers. Marcus sighed. Mr. Bennett, with all due respect, you don't understand any of this. Social media isn't just some silly game to Olivia. It was her life, her passion. She poured her heart and soul into it, even if it wasn't always authentic. That's exactly what I'm worried about. The inauthenticity. I saw how it was changing her, how she was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Maybe, Marcus conceded, but the way you went about it was nuclear. Now she's isolated, humiliated. You've pushed her further away than ever. That's why I need your help. Can you talk to her? Try to get her to see that I acted out of love, however misguided. Marcus looked at me, his expression softening slightly. I can try, Mr. Bennett. But I can't promise anything. You've done a lot of damage. The meeting with Marcus felt like a small step, but the path ahead remained shrouded in doubt. I spent the next few days sifting through old photo albums, searching for clues, for answers to the question that haunted me: where did I go wrong? I remembered Mrs. Davison, Olivia's high school art teacher, who had always encouraged her creativity. I found her number and made the call. She listened patiently as I stammered through my explanation, then offered a gentle perspective. Olivia always had a strong need for validation, Mr. Bennett. Art was her outlet, her way of expressing herself and connecting with others. Perhaps social media became a substitute, a faster, more readily available source of that validation. Her words resonated. I also spoke with Professor Davies, Olivia's former psychology professor, hoping he could offer insights into her motivations. He spoke of the pressures young people face in today's hyper-connected world, the constant need to curate and project an ideal image. Each conversation offered a piece of the puzzle, but the overall picture remained blurry. I felt like a detective piecing together a crime scene, except the victim was my own daughter, and I was the prime suspect. Evenings were the hardest. The house felt vast and empty, Olivia's absence a palpable weight. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, each tick a reminder of the time slipping away, the distance growing between us. I would often find myself staring at her closed bedroom door, imagining her inside, nursing her wounds, building walls even higher. One evening, I sat alone in the living room, the flickering light of the television casting long shadows across the walls. I picked up Olivia's favorite childhood book, The Little Prince, its pages worn and dog-eared from countless readings. As I flipped through the familiar illustrations, a wave of despair washed over me. I had tried to protect her, but in doing so, I had only succeeded in hurting her, in shattering the fragile bond we once shared. I was alone, adrift in a sea of regret, with no map and no compass, desperately searching for a way back to shore. Withdrawal. The silence was deafening. Not the quiet of our usually strained dinners, but a vacuum, sucked clean of even the hum of the refrigerator. Olivia hadn't spoken a word since that night. Since the ruin. I watched her from the doorway of her room. She sat hunched over her phone, the pale light reflecting in her wide, unblinking eyes. It was a slow-motion train wreck, each swipe of her finger a piece of wreckage scattering. I knew, without needing to see the screen, that she was deleting. First, the carefully curated Instagram, the platform where she'd built her castle of lies. Then, the fleeting, filtered world of Snapchat. Even TikTok, the one she'd initially dismissed as childish, then embraced with a desperate fervor, vanished. The finality of it hit me like a physical blow. The digital ghost she had so meticulously crafted, erased with a few taps. I wanted to reach out, to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat, barbed with regret. The phone clattered onto the desk. Olivia didn't flinch. She simply stared at the blank wall opposite her bed, a canvas as empty as her online profile now was. The room, once a riot of trendy clothes and influencer paraphernalia, felt sterile, stripped bare of its personality. The next few days bled together in a haze of unspoken tension. Olivia became a wraith, flitting through the house, avoiding eye contact, her presence a heavy, invisible weight. She stopped eating meals with me, claiming she wasn't hungry. I'd find untouched plates outside her door hours later, the food congealing, a metaphor for our relationship. Her friends called, their voices bright and bubbly, oblivious. She'd answer, her tone flat and strained, offering vague excuses about being busy, having a cold. Each call ended abruptly, leaving me to imagine the half-truths and carefully constructed narratives she was weaving to explain her sudden disappearance from the social scene. One afternoon, Marcus came by. I intercepted him at the door, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. "She doesn't want to see anyone," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus looked past me, towards the closed door of Olivia's room. "I just want to make sure she's okay, Mr. Bennett." She's processing," I stammered, hating the inadequacy of the word. "Give her time, Marcus. Please." He hesitated, his brow furrowed with concern. "All right, but tell her I'm here if she needs anything." I nodded, feeling a fresh wave of guilt wash over me. I was isolating her further, protecting her from the consequences of her actions, yes, but also shielding myself from the judgment in her friend's eyes. The shame gnawed at her, I could see it. It was etched in the slump of her shoulders, the hollows beneath her eyes, the way she flinched at sudden noises. She moved through the house like a shadow, a ghost haunting her own life. One evening, I found her sitting on the back porch, staring out at the twilight. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle, a fragrance that always reminded me of her mother. I sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between us. "Olivia," I began, my voice trembling slightly. She didn't turn, didn't acknowledge my presence. "I know I messed up," I continued, the words heavy with remorse. "I was trying to protect you, but I went about it all wrong." Still nothing. "I'm so sorry, Olivia. I never wanted to hurt you." A single tear traced a path down her cheek, shimmering in the fading light. It was the only sign that she had heard me. "It wasn't real, Dad," she finally whispered, her voice hoarse. None of it was real. The admission hung in the air between us, a fragile bridge spanning the chasm I had created. But even as I heard it, I knew the bridge wasn't strong enough. Not yet. The real work, the real healing, had barely begun. The withdrawal wasn't just from social media, it was from life itself. And I, her father, was the one who had driven her into the shadows. Seeking help. The waiting room was all muted blues and greens, designed, I supposed, to leach away anxiety. Olivia sat stiffly beside me, her gaze fixed on a point somewhere over the receptionist's head. She hadn't spoken more than a handful of words since I'd practically dragged her out of bed this morning. "It'll be good for you," I'd mumbled, feeling the inadequacy of the sentiment settle like lead in my stomach. A woman with kind eyes and a warm smile emerged. "Olivia? I'm Dr. Ramirez. Please, come in." Olivia rose slowly, a marionette with tangled strings. I watched her disappear down the hall, the silence she left behind thick and suffocating. I wanted to believe this was the right thing, that Dr. Ramirez could somehow stitch her back together. But all I felt was a bone-deep dread. The hour crawled. I flipped through magazines, the glossy images of perfect lives mocking me. I imagined Olivia pouring out her carefully constructed facade, the lies I had shattered laid bare. What would Dr. Ramirez make of it all? What would she make of me? Finally, the door opened. Olivia's face was pale, but something had shifted. Her eyes, usually shadowed with a dull apathy, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite name. Hope. Resignation. Ready to go? I asked, standing. She nodded, avoiding my gaze. Yeah. The car ride was silent. I resisted the urge to pepper her with questions, knowing any attempt at probing would be met with a wall of silence. When we got home, she went straight to her room. It wasn't until dinner that I saw a crack in the ice. She picked at her food, pushing peas around her plate with her fork. After a long silence, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. She asked me about Mom. My chest tightened. And it was weird. Like she knew Mom better than I did. I swallowed. What do you mean? She asked about how Mom always wanted me to be seen. Noticed. Like it was important to her. Olivia finally looked up, her eyes filled with a confusion that mirrored my own. I never really thought about it before. But Mom was always pushing me towards things, dance class, beauty pageants, even that stupid talent show in 5th grade. I always thought it was just Mom being Mom. A wave of nausea washed over me. Had I been so focused on Olivia's online world that I'd missed the signs of something else entirely? Had my own grief blinded me to the pressures my wife had unknowingly placed on our daughter? Dr. Ramirez said maybe I was trying to fulfill something for her, Olivia continued, her voice trembling slightly. That maybe all the stuff online, wasn't just about me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Olivia hadn't just been creating a persona, she'd been trying to fill a void, a need for validation that had been subtly ingrained in her from a young age. And I, in my infinite wisdom, had ripped that away from her. The next few weeks unfolded in a slow, agonizing dance. Olivia continued her sessions with Dr. Ramirez. She started taking walks in the park, sometimes even without her headphones. Small, almost imperceptible shifts. One evening, I found her sitting on the porch swing, staring out at the darkening sky. I hesitated, then sat beside her. The swing creaked softly, the only sound in the twilight. Dr. Ramirez says I used social media to feel important, she said, her voice low. Like I mattered. Because, I didn't really feel like I did. The confession hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain. I was good at it, she continued, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. Making things look perfect. Getting people to like me. It was addictive. I know, I said, my voice thick with remorse. I understand. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine. Do you understand that it wasn't just lies? That it was something I needed? I reached out and took her hand, my fingers wrapping around hers. Yes, Liv. I do. And I'm so sorry that I took that away from you. But we can find something else. Something real. She squeezed my hand, a fragile connection in the vast emptiness that had grown between us. Dr. Ramirez says I need to figure out who I am offline, she said quietly. Without the filters. Without the likes. Then that's what we'll do, I said, my voice firm. Together. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in months, a sliver of hope pierced through the darkness. We had a starting point. And maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Rebuilding. The hush in the house had undergone a transformation. It wasn't the oppressive weight of bereavement or the stinging chill of accusation after the revealing article. Instead, a fragile stillness lingered, akin to a held breath before a fledgling takes to the air. Olivia remained secluded for much of the day, yet the outbursts of tears had subsided. The staccato clicks of her keyboard yielded to the gentle rasp of charcoal on paper. 3 days a week, she volunteered at the local haven for the unhoused. Initially, she would return tight-lipped, offering no details of her day. Her face bore the marks of exhaustion, a haunted quality clouding her gaze. Gradually, however, the silence began to dissipate. This guy, Marcus, she ventured one evening, toying with her supper. Used to be a chef. Trained in French cuisine, believe it or not. Addiction took everything. Makes a killer cup of coffee, though, the best I've ever had. There was no boasting in her tone, no need for outside approval. Just a plain, truthful observation, colored with quiet wonder. Authentic. The most genuine sentiment I'd heard from her in what felt like an age. I hesitated to speak, reluctant to shatter the delicate moment. Maybe you could ask him for some lessons, I proposed, attempting a light tone. You always enjoyed cooking. She shrugged, but a spark, could it be amusement? Flickered in her eyes. Perhaps. The shelter appeared to be her sanctuary, a place devoid of manufactured lighting and curated images. Only raw, unfiltered connection mattered. One afternoon, I observed her as she departed, her brow creased in concentration as she listened intently to an elderly woman whose visage bore the etched map of time and weathered kindness. For the first time in a long while, Olivia seemed present. Then came the tentative reach-outs toward Sarah and Chloe. Friends from whom she had subtly, and then blatantly, withdrawn as her online popularity ballooned. I caught fragments of their murmured conversations, bursts of nervous laughter punctuating the air, a delicate dance of reconnection after a prolonged disconnect. One Saturday, I discovered them sprawled across the living room floor, besieged by paintbrushes and canvases, a vibrant explosion of color engulfing the space. Painting. Not the pristine, staged content of her social media, but raw, vibrant, defiantly imperfect art. Having fun? I inquired, pausing in the doorway. Olivia glanced up, her cheeks flushed, a smear of crimson adorning her nose. Yeah, Dad. Actually, yeah. Her voice possessed a lightness, a lack of the performative sincerity that used to grate on me. Undeniably genuine. She now devoted hours in the small studio I'd created in the spare room. A far cry from the lavish photography studios she once frequented. Simply a functional space with balanced light and a blank canvas. Still, she seemed happy there, immersed in a world of hue and texture. I'd occasionally steal a peek, observing her from the periphery. The focused gleam in her eyes as she worked, the furrowing of her brow in concentration, the soft drone emanating from her throat. A different sort of focus than she previously displayed, a deeper, more internalized drive. One evening, I found her gazing at a canvas, a look of acute frustration etched upon her face. It was a portrait, a swirling nebula of blues and greens, with hints of a familiar face materializing from the depths. It's not working, she confessed, her voice strained. I can't seem to get it right. What is it? I questioned, moving closer. She hesitated, then shrugged. It's Mom, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I'm trying to paint her, but it just doesn't capture her. I understood then that it transcended a mere portrait. It represented an attempt to reclaim something lost, something elusive. A memory, a sentiment, a bond severed prematurely. I rested my hand on her shoulder. Maybe you're striving too hard for perfection, I suggested gently. Perhaps just allow it to be what it is. She met my gaze, her eyes a mixture of sorrow and a nascent understanding. She picked up her brush again, but this time, she painted with a renewed energy. Less constrained, more flowing. Less about replicating an image, more about conveying an emotion. The recovery was gradual, meticulous. Akin to reassembling a shattered artifact, carefully affixing each shard into its proper place. There were setbacks, moments of self-doubt, occasions when I witnessed the return of old shadows flitting within her eyes. But there were also moments of authentic progress, flashes of the woman I believed she could be. A woman defined not by fleeting digital approval, but by the strength of her own moral fiber. Forgiveness and connection. Linseed oil, faint yet promising, still clung to Olivia as she descended the stairs. She found me slumped over a mug of tepid coffee, the newspaper splayed open, a modest headline, almost apologetic, highlighting local shelter volunteers. Progress, I conceded, from the earlier, more aggressive headlines. A delicate cough broke the silence. Dad? My pulse quickened with familiar anxiety. Hey, kiddo. She settled gingerly on a chair's edge, hands knotted in her lap. In the hallway, the contested portrait leaned against the wall, still unseen, unmentioned. I wanted to apologize, she began, barely audible. For what I said. Calling you names. It was unfair. A wave of relief, so profound it nearly brought me to my knees. Liv, you don't have to, no, she insisted, head rising. I need to. You were trying to make sense of things. And I was acting like a brat. Selfish and awful. Her candor was disarming. I reached for her hand. I wasn't trying to understand, Liv. That's my failing. I was judging. Driven by fear and anger, I failed to see your perspective. The words left a bitter taste. The confession felt overdue by years. I'm so sorry, Olivia. For everything. Exposing you like that. The worst thing I've ever done. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she returned the pressure of my hand. It stung, she confessed, voice thick. It really did. But I also get why you did it. In a way. You thought you were shielding me. Shielding you from what? The question was raw. From a life that felt inauthentic. From being someone you weren't. She glanced at our entwined hands, her thumb tracing patterns on my skin. I'm not sure, she whispered. Maybe I was trying to protect myself, too. From being unremarkable. From being, me. We sat in contemplative silence, the weight of our past pressing down. Then, her eyes met mine, searching. Can we start fresh? More than anything, I admitted, my voice catching. Wipe the slate clean. A faint smile touched her lips. No more secrets. No more secrets, I vowed. The subsequent days were tentative, laced with fragility. We talked, truly talked. About Mom, her art, the shelter, the pressures of social media, the fear of inadequacy. I gained more insight into her during those few days than in the preceding years. I learned about the anxieties that plagued her, the relentless need for affirmation, the feeling of being adrift in a world obsessed with appearances. One evening, I found her absorbed in her phone, a contemplative air about her. What's got your attention? I inquired, carefully. She looked up, genuine joy illuminating her face. I'm posting about the shelter, she explained. Trying to drum up support for supplies. I thought I'd share some of the actual experiences I've witnessed there. The real stories. Not just pretty pictures. I watched her fingers dance across the screen. She showed me the draft before posting. It was unfiltered, honest, and resonant. The focus was not on herself, but on the people she was assisting. On making a tangible impact. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Donations flooded in. Messages of encouragement filled her inbox. More importantly, there were responses from people moved to volunteer, to participate, to initiate change within their communities. Wow, she breathed, her voice laced with wonder. I never anticipated this. Perhaps, I suggested, people are weary of the superficial. Perhaps they crave authenticity. A week later, she unveiled the portrait. It wasn't a perfect replica of her mother, not in a strictly photographic sense. But it captured something deeper, more essential. The warmth of her smile, the light in her eyes, the resilience of her spirit. It was a portrait born of love, loss, and remembrance. It's beautiful, Liv, I choked out. Her smile was bittersweet. I think she would have approved. Later, as I prepared for bed, I noticed Olivia at her desk, bathed in the cool glow of her monitor. She was writing, not constructing a fabricated persona, not curating a flawless image, but simply writing. Chronicling her experiences, her emotions, her aspirations. I paused in the doorway, observing her. She glanced up, catching my eye, and offered a small, weary, but genuine smile. Just writing, she murmured. That's good, I replied. Keep writing. Turning away, I felt a sense of quiet certainty that we were on a better course. The road ahead wouldn't be without its bumps. There would be times of struggle. But we were united. We were open. And we were learning the difficult art of forgiveness, both of each other, and of ourselves. Rebuilding trust would be a prolonged endeavor, but we had finally begun. Thank you for spending your time with my story. Feel free to share your thoughts or reactions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.